Actually was going to do a video about horror movies that I think have good concepts but were executed poorly, so perfect comment. This comment was left on a video I did about the movie Tarot, and while I actually had fun watching this movie, I do agree. I think the end just got really corny and it could have been a lot better. But I loved the concept of this movie. I love the idea of bringing astrology into horror. So I hope they do that more, but better. Next is The Forest. This movie came out in 2016 and I haven't heard anybody talk about it since 2016, and that's simply just because it's forgettable. This is another one that's not terrible and it has its moments, but it is not great. I think the idea behind it is fantastic, like Aokigahara Forest as a concept for a horror movie is great. And there were absolutely some moments in this movie that admittedly scared me, like when she finds that fucking schoolgirl down in that hole she falls in. But I think it was overall just anticlimactic towards the end. But again, Aokigahara Forest as a premise for a horror movie was a great thought. Probably the number one in this category for me is The Nun, especially because I fucking love the Conjuring universe. And there was so much potential here because I think Valak and the character design of the nun in general is one of the scariest fucking characters ever. But this movie just fell so flat. The premise of the nun itself is great, but the actual plot of this movie was bad. The execution was bad. And the same goes for the second one, both just completely forgettable. The Gallows. This is another movie that I actually really enjoy up until the end. The idea of a high school student dying during a play and then coming back to seek vengeance on the kids that are doing a modern day version of the play. I think that's super creative, and again, I really loved the premise of this movie. This is another movie though where I feel the ending ruined the whole movie. It literally ends with a cheap CGI jump scare and it literally makes the whole movie irrelevant. Speaking of movies in this category where the ending ruined it, I'm a sucker for a possession movie. Possession movies are the movies that probably scare me the most. And I think The Devil Inside had the potential to do exactly that, and I really liked the concept of it. But it ended making me feel like I needed more, there was supposed to be more movie, and the credits just roll. This one still bothers me because this one really could have been so great. And I remember when this one was coming out, them saying it's the scariest movie ever made. The trailers look so good. And it was just so disappointing. I would actually love for somebody to reboot this with the same concept and do it properly. I'm looking at you, Mike Flanagan. And finally, I have a movie that I feel is very divisive in the horror community. I remember when I first heard about this movie, it was years ago, and people were saying it was the scariest movie ever and the greatest horror movie ever made. And I watched this movie 3 times because I thought I was missing something. I thought I was the problem because everybody seemed to love it. And I fucking hated it every time. But I think the concept of Lake Mungo is great. I think the plot twist is fucking incredible. I personally just don't think the execution was good. And I know people are going to disagree with that because, again, a lot of people seem to really love this movie. I feel in the horror community, it's either you love it or you hate it. There's no in between. Let me know what other movies you think fall into this category.